Deep Rising. Released in 1998, this film was sold primarily as an action-adventure flick. They showed off a lot of the different scenes in the trailers, and unfortunately, it ruined a lot of the surprises, which means that I waited for it to come on TV, and by then, it was butchered with commercials and heavily edited for content. The film essentially relies on spectacle to show off a lot of things, and bring you into the world. We're told via opening that the Pacific has huge underwater canyons, although they're called trenches, that are big enough to hold the Himalayas. While this is true and plenty of plot devices like those of Pacific Rim and Transformers franchise have relied on the Marianas Trench for a plot device, this was one of the first monster movies to do so. What's more, I actually like that they don't bother having someone talk about it as exposition. They simply leave it up there for you to read, and then say that a lot of ships have been lost in that area. Actually, the loss of sea vessels and planes in most of the world's oceans is about average, no matter where you are. It doesn't run higher in areas like the Bermuda Triangle or anywhere else, but the filmmakers do bother to show us a variety of vessels on the bottom of the ocean from the monster's perspective, and then we see a large thing moving upwards. Just for the purpose of discussion, the monster here is basically supposed to be a kraken, like from the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. It's unfortunate, but Deep Rising actually does justice by showing as little of the monster as possible and letting us only see part of it. The monster eats people like we eat shrimp. That's pretty terrifying. In the tropical Pacific near Southeast Asia, we're shown a cruise liner full of wealthy people that is supposed to be so well designed that the ship stays stable against the sways of the surface water. In terms of physics, this would mean that the ship had to have a center of gravity as low as possible so that the mass of the ship's momentum was dictated by an area mostly under the surface of the water. In other words, the ship would be bottom-heavy, which is fine, as most vessels try to be bottom-heavy anyway, from as far back as schooners and clippers. Contrastingly, we have a smaller boat captained by Treat Williams, which is essentially a smuggler vessel. We're told what kind of character he is in the first few seconds of meeting him. He's Han Solo of the Pacific. His ship is mostly for cargo. He doesn't ask questions, and his crew is minimal. A first mate and her lover, a mechanic. I actually like the crew a lot. They seem like good people. Treat Williams is just accustomed to low-end smuggling, not piracy. But the men and cargo he's carrying are overly butch mercenaries with no loyalty or honor. And when the mechanic stumbles on some high-yield torpedoes in the cargo, the mercenaries are already planning to seize the boat. When the Millennium Muskie, as I'll call it, hits a speedboat that fell off the cruise liner when our monster attacked it, and the speedboat damages the hull and the engines, which means that the crew will have to go aboard to find replacement parts. We've also met a beautiful cat burglar played by Famke Janssen, and like Treat Williams, they're not really the characters. It's Janssen and Williams as Janssen and Williams. They aren't the characters, they're the actors playing the characters. Anyway, Janssen was caught trying to steal diamonds from the ship's vault, and is locked away in the ship's pantry when the monster attacks, and after our heroes and their captors come aboard. In one of the laziest plot devices, the cruise captain had her locked in the pantry with her lock picks, and she merely opens the panel on the lock, stuck the metal pick inside, jabbed and twisted at some part, and although some sparks flew out, she was not electrocuted. Given that she's probably standing on rubber matting, she also has some metal trays right next to her. Even though she seems to know her way around the electronics panel inside, she supposedly just knows how to break out of there. Now, if that was the case, why didn't she just wait a few hours, break out, and then lay low? Given she had plenty to eat, and it was probably only an hour before the ship got attacked by the monster, but they would need access to the pantry at some point. Another thing that gets me is that this ship is in international waters. The captain's rules go. They could and should have had her strip searched, and even if the brig isn't finished, there has to be a room that they can just put her in and tie her up. This is a pickpocket and a cat burglar. Of course she's going to figure a way out if you just dump her anywhere in the same outfit unrestrained. The pirates are wondering what happened to everyone when a cadaver splashes right up into the Millennium Muskie, and scares the first mate, who is trying to repair the hull breach. This is the saddest point in the movie because she's doing her job. She's sweet to her boyfriend, she's smart, we like her, and the monster gets her. This scene actually bothered me because I don't just want her to live, I want her to be the heroine of the film. I want her to get the ship fixed, save her boyfriend and her captain, and get them out of there. You lost an opportunity there, Stephen Sommers. Sommers, the director, is known for writing and directing a lot of popular action movies, and his projects as writer and/or director include the original 1989 version of Catch Me If You Can, The Jungle Book, Tom and Huck, Oliver Twist, The Mummy, Van Helsing, and the Scorpion King franchises. The first film in the G.I. Joe franchise, and so on. This actually explains why Brendan Fraser was in the latter, and Kevin J. O'Connor is in almost everything that Sommers has a hand in. And if you've seen his movies, then you know that Sommers' style is to pick off every character he can and leave only the main hero and bad guy alive for the climax. It bugs me a lot that he does this because he overdoes it, so much so that I think it's the reason why they took him off of the G.I. Joe projects. Sommers relies on the idea that the heroes have to have their base of operations attacked and destroyed, have allies removed, a heroine kidnapped to be rescued, no matter how competent she is, and have the conflict always end with a good guy, who's also a badass, take on Solo, a bad guy, who is bad because he doesn't value people, and uses an organized system to take over things. The only way that Sommers seems able to resolve conflicts in his movies is with one person fighting another person. It's so played out and tired that I can understand the call for different approaches now. Cinema was dying for so long because it was all too similar. I still think it's lousy that films are mostly based on previous ideas at this point, and occasionally you get a film like The Illusionist or the Tyler Perry franchises. A lot of people criticize the Tyler Perry films as relying on the Medea character for the comedic effect of a man in drag, but Medea isn't funny because she's Perry in drag. She's funny because of who she is. The stories are character-driven and aren't just about outrageous caricatures. The same is true of The Illusionist, where the film is driven by characters and the plot. Not just jump scares, tropes, special effects, and tough guys shooting guns. In other words, Stephen Sommers or Zack Snyder's usual heavy-handed styles play to the groundlings, while other better directors and writers play to everyone. By far, the most important scene of Deep Rising comes when Williams and Joey are working in the machine shop, balls deep in water, and the dialogue goes as follows. Williams: "What you got there?" Joey: "A peanut." Williams: "A peanut?" Joey: "A peanut." Joey proceeds to crack open the peanut as a plunk is heard, indicating that he dropped the meat of his peanut. Shit! That scene goes nowhere, does nothing, and presents no new information. It doesn't foreshadow a thing. In fact, the whole scene with the Australian thug looking after a mysterious noise could have been cut to just them working. He wanders off, and a little while later he dies. People are needlessly mean to the mechanic played by Joey, and he actually makes light of how unnecessary that really is. Somehow they survive an elevator crash from 12 decks up onto a deck with flooding on the deck above it, but that is dry, yet full of corpses stripped of flesh. At best, the scene in this corridor might parallel the peanut scene, but not really. After some expository dialogue, we get a look at the monster tentacle, and out plops one of the pirates, half digested and melted from the acid. Now, earlier I said that the monster was a kraken, but more expository dialogue says that they must be giant segmented worms, with the fact that we see that they're guided by hearing. This is starting to become achingly familiar. So now it's Tremors on the Ocean. Whatever movie, I've got all day. Naturally, we have to rip off of the Poseidon adventure and have them swim underwater with no air for 20 meters. That's 60 feet or 20 yards roughly. Or actually, it's about 40 yards, I guess. After some random crap, the black guy dies. That's all that comes out of the scene. Our British pirate gets killed off stupidly, which is ironic since he's been the most intelligent so far. Our band doesn't bother taking other routes presented to them because the monsters are trying to guide them up to the bow. All that then leads to is a pile of bloody bones. Williams loses the backpack with the replacement parts. Weirdly enough, the mechanic survives being shot in the leg as the lead pirate leaves him to feed the monster. And after Joey finds him being eaten by a monster, Joey gives him a gun, but he wastes the bullets trying to shoot Joey, and can't kill himself. I don't understand why Joey doesn't just shoot the guy. We finally get to see that, as I said earlier, the monster is indeed more of a kraken than a worm. We're treated to a bit of a 90s joke that escaped the nostalgia critic when he reviewed 1998's Godzilla, as in that film, Matthew Broderick's character, upon seeing an 8-foot pile of fish, declares, "That's a lot of fish." Williams says upon seeing the kraken, "Now there's something you don't see every day." People actually forget that understatement was a big running joke in the 90s. If something weird or outrageous happens, the joke was to state the obvious in an understated manner as much as possible. It's a cheap joke, but it's what we were doing back then. Williams uses his personal gun to shoot the kraken in the eye and gets back to the ship, but it looks like Joey died too. At least Joey mourned the loss of his girlfriend and Williams mourned the loss of Joey. The climax finally comes when Jensen and Williams ride out of the ship on a jet ski to a nearby island. Unfortunately, the end is a cliffhanger, as we're just relieved to see Joey wash ashore on Williams' surfboard, only to then have it revealed that there are giant monsters on the island too. We don't get to find out what it is, though, just cut to black after we hear Williams exclaim, "Now what?" A quick note on the nostalgia critic whom I mentioned earlier. I don't think that Doug Walker would review this movie with as much substance or content as I've given you in this review. For focusing on nostalgia as much as he does, Doug Walker misses a lot of basic cultural elements and focuses more on generalizing his opinions and painting the picture of nostalgic films with rosier and rosier tints or uglier and uglier tints. He basically kisses Disney's butt by actually making every Disney movie sound like the studio is anything other than a corporate shill full of propagandizing media. Nostalgia Critic tends to gloss over a lot of important details to a film so that he can show mock outrage and make mediocre sketches based on one tiny thing within a film or TV show, but given that he's more successful than me, I'll try a summation in his style, but with my own points. So that's Deep Rising, and as a film, it holds up as well as any other of Summer's action movie catalog. It follows the rule of Chekhov's gun literally, in that when we see Finnegan's gun in the opening, it's used at or by the end of the story. The bad guys get their just desserts in the end, and it's not entirely a happy ending either, contrary to what we're expecting. We're left with some sequel bait that never gets resolved, and that's not uncommon for dumb action films. The ones that don't try to leave you wanting more are the ones that typically get sequels. And the ones that leave cliffhangers are usually canned after the first and only film. Under Siege, Pitch Black, The Mummy, Hellboy, Star Wars, etc. all got sequels because the first films could stand alone. The special effects in Deep Rising are a good mix of practical and computers. They're used as far as telling the story. The characters are only smart when they're running away, but otherwise seem pretty dumb. I actually think that the plot and characters would be great for a video game, as it has the perfect elements. The thief can have puzzles for picking locks, and the mechanic can have challenges for making replacement parts. There could be challenges to cross hallways without making noises to escape the tentacles, and the cutscenes would be pretty substantial. You even have the option for different endings, based on the choices you make. I think that would make for a brilliant game, especially given that we already have a boss fight written into the story. I'm not the nostalgia critic. I review things better so you don't have to watch them. See you later here on Film Recommendations.